Welcome in college baseball Central fans, specifically fans in Texas. Jackson, while we're missing Marshall today, but we're diving into Texas A&M. Jackson, how we feeling tonight?
Good, excited to talk about a good A&M team. So
Yeah, they are very, very high on a lot of polls. Let me get our poll pulled up so I can get our exact number. We have them at ninth. I think D1 has them top five. So again, a lot of variance though with this Aggie team is a lot is unknown. Again, they were top five to start the season last year, coming off that trip to Omaha. Last season, 38-27, Jim Schlossnagel's third season. Series wins over tournament teams Auburn, Kentucky, and Florida. Finalist in the SEC championship, knocked out LSU. They were up 2-0 in the Stanford regional after beating Fullerton and Stanford. Stanford rolled through that losers bracket and beat them twice and sent them home. Key departures for Texas A&M: Hunter Haas, shortstop, headed to the draft. He was drafted a little bit early. Jack Moss at first, hit 350 for him. He headed off to the draft as well. Austin Boast, who was number 12 last year, the second baseman, had a kind of a disappointing season, hitting 220. He is COVID out of eligibility. Cason Wells transferred to Weatherford Junior College. He started a few games in center. Stanley Tucker started a few games in center as well. He was drafted and signed. Brett Minich, who played in right and DH at the end after an injury, he is out of eligibility. Trevor Warner, their starting third baseman, drafted and gone. Jordan Thompson, their starting center fielder, who was kind of hit or miss, he is gone as well. And their Friday guy, Nathan Dittmer, is gone. I need to catch my breath. That's a lot of departures coming off this Aggie squad. Jackson, how did you feel about Texas A&M last year? I felt like they kind of disappointed at times, and then at other times it just feels like the pitching really, really held them back.
yeah, I agree. I mean, in my opinion, they showed flashes of being really good, especially coming off Omaha, like going to Omaha the year before. I expected them to be just as elite. But like you said, a lot of these losses hurt. Jack, like the two corner infield guys, Jack Moss and where do you go, Trevor Warner, like that hurts really bad. They got a lot of guys drafted, so a lot of shoes to fill this year. But I feel like they should be filling them pretty nicely.
Yeah, a few notes. I know that they opened up with LSU, who really kind of punched them in the teeth. They lost to a Portland team very, very early in a series and kind of, I wouldn't say derailed their whole season. The big story for them was the start and pitching. I mean, they went just about the entire way without an SEC victory. And then they get to the SEC tournament and have back to back 8 inning one hitters from Troy Witzing and um, Justin Lampkin. So it's an interesting group because they return a lot from the pitching staff. But as we kind of jump into the field, there's a lot of stuff that's set in stone. There's really only about two position battles. That first one we're starting out with, Max Coffer is who we project to be the starter. But again, Jackson Appel, the Penn transfer, started all 50 games for Penn last year. He's going to be in the mix. And then Hank Bard, who started 22 games and really competed very, very closely with Coffer and started a ton of SEC games. He's going to be the other one. Coffer, I'm going to be honest with you, his batting average was not very good last year. He struggled very, very early on. He struck out a ton, 30 times to be exact. But he came on very, very late in the regional, had 2 hits in the Stanford regional, and I think he was took a lot better at bats there. He's kind of who we project to be the starter, and he was the guy first out of the dugout in fall. So a lot there. And then Jackson Appel, I think, figures to be kind of in a DH role, or if Coffer kind of slides, I think that
Yeah.
is going to happen. But again, I think Coffer has to be the leader at the bat rack or coming out, right, Jackson?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And then I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if Appel gets rest behind the plate. He had 300 last year at Penn, so
Yeah.
the bat's going to play. It's just a matter of where they decide to put him, whether it's behind the dish or at DH. You know what I mean?
And again, it is worth noting Coffer is only a sophomore. He left high school early, and that really showed at times. But again, does that kind of I think he's kind of set to have a breakout season here and kind of be a lot better than his average. But again,
Yeah,
Jackson Appel waiting in the wings, who hit 300 for Penn and was the Penn starting catcher. I mean, we've seen a lot of guys from these Ivy leagues kind of make that big transition into D1 ball. Moving on, this one's kind of another position battle, but I think it's 3 guys for 3 spots. So depending on how they use it, Teddy Burton, the Michigan transfer coming over, hit 301 with 13 home runs. Him and Ryan Targosh, who played first last year, I think one of those two will be either the first baseman or the DH. Ryan Targash again as number 12. Hit 225, but 2 seasons ago, I mean, he was a force. He led the SEC in RBIs, took a step back. He was dealing with a hamstring injury. It figures to be one of those two. And Targash, it is worth mentioning too that I think he's competing with second base if he loses this job. So like I said, it does feel like three guys for three spots. But we'll start with Teddy Burton. I think he was a tremendous get for Coach Schlossnagle coming out of Michigan, hitting 301. There is going to be a little bit of a jump coming over from Big Ten, but I think his bat plays really well, and especially plays. He reminds me a ton of Jack Mods, which ironically is who he's
Yeah, I
fulfilling.
agree.
The power numbers aren't going to jump out, but he's just a consistent 300 hitter, which I think is what the Aggies need. They have a ton of
Yeah.
firepower deeper, so their first baseman, they need kind of that consistent one. And again, what are you kind of seeing from this position battle with Teddy Burton and Ryan Targash?
I mean, I think Teddy Burton wins it out. Obviously, he's going to be a great middle of the order bat. 5 or 6 hole. And then the thing for Ryan, I would imagine the coaching staff is working on him with cutting down the strikeouts. So like the strikeouts are a big thing for him. If you can cut those down, especially as a first baseman, that would be huge. But I would imagine Teddy Burton wins out the job on opening day.
Yeah, and the other name too, as we kind of project, I said Caden Kent is going to be the second baseman. He started when Warner was hurt at third, played in the outfield a little bit too as well. He hit 265 with 1 home run and 23 RBIs. And Schlossnagle said they really needed to find a spot for his bat, as his bat plays tremendously well. Obviously, there's a big league pedigree there, as his dad is, I think Hall of Famer, but obviously he's on the outside looking in right now, Jeff Kent. But he had a very mature approach last year for him, and I'm actually really surprised that when Warner came back from injury, that Caden Kent was kind of kicked to the curb. So I think Schlossnagle's really excited to kind of see Kent get a full season of workload, and
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see him at second base and see how he plays the position.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's going to mature really well this year. He was again young guy. I think with more playing time, he's just going to only improve.
Yeah, and again, I think he's a lefty bat. And I think that that's kind of another thing to watch is Coffer and Teddy Burton are both righties. Ryan Targas is obviously a switch hitter. He is kind of that lefty bat that I think is really, really the Aggie strength. That he's going to be a guy. I think that that's really the only problem that I see in where he hits in the lineup because he is a top of the order guy.
Hmm.
Is Slosh probably doesn't want to get this big run on lefties because when we get to the outfield, the lefties are truly the best spot. But
Yep.
moving on to the other side, we got Ali Carmillo, I think is how you pronounce it. He's coming over from Cal State Northridge, had an absolute monster season. Big West Freshman of the Year, hit 371 for him. Actually, I don't think he was the Big West. He was first team All Big West, so
Yeah,
that
I
was
think
a
so.
correction on my part. But I think that the thing that really kind of jumps out to me is obviously that 371 average, but he plays a really, really smooth shortstop, and he has a tremendous range. I think he's locked down that spot. I don't think there's anybody else that's going to come in there.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. I think Schloss and the guys only see him for 1 year as he moves on to bigger and better things. But
Yep.
excited to kind of see kind of how he grows as an athlete, kind of making that jump over into SEC play.
Yeah, that's my only concern is the jump to SEC play. Obviously, the pitching's better. So I mean, I wonder how the bat plays, but I would imagine the bat transfers over just fine.
Yep, and he's a righty hitter. Another righty hitter that's really, really catching a lot of attention is Gavin Grovich. Athletic bat power, played for the U18 Team USA team. Middle order of the guy who truly is kind of the future of Aggie baseball. I think he has kind of a Jace Lavalette season like he had last year. I think that
Yeah.
it's going to be a little bit of a growing pain, but I mean the power is just off the charts. I mean he had a few balls that had over 100 exit velo, and in a lineup loaded full of power, he almost feels like he's the strongest guy, which is almost crazy to think about the two guys that we're going
Yeah.
to talk about here in a second. But I think Gavin Grovich is another guy who really kind of has locked down that third base spot, which again I think was Caden Kent's before he signed there. So
Yeah.
credit to him for displacing somebody that Sloss, mentioned in his press conference is, hey, we need to find this guy a spot. Gavin Grovich
Yeah.
feels like almost a lock at third base.
Yeah, I agree. Playing it as a true freshman, that's going to be very interesting. Obviously, you never know how that's going to go, but big athletic guy, I think the power transfers over perfectly fine. He's going to be a stud.
Yeah, it's almost weird to see because freshman usually means one of two things: that hey, this guy's either a generational talent, or
Yeah.
hey, we have holes that we're trying to fill. This one feels like the first one. They
Yeah.
have, I think he truly is the deepest. This is like the deepest bat that they've had in I think a long, long time, which is crazy to think about because Jace Lavalette was in the hunt for SEC Freshman of the Year. Obviously didn't win it. Moving to the outfield, we'll start in right field is the guy who's probably, in my opinion, the biggest get out of anybody in the
Yep.
transfer portal. Two-way player Braden Montgomery, switch hitter, throws from the right side. Had kind of a quiet fall, if I'm being honest with you, but the one thing that was very, very on display was his arm strength. I mean, he threw a guy out from the warning track at third by about 15 steps. I mean, he has just a next level arm, and I'm really excited to see kind of how he plays. Hit 336, pitches a little bit, projected top 15 pick. This one, Sloss kind of mentioned in the past about, wanting to leave TCU for bigger and better things. This feels like an
Yep.
NIL kind of play. This is,
Yeah.
is probably the best transfer I think A&M's had in a long, long time across
Yeah.
any sport.
I mean, in the transfer portal this offseason, it was Braden Montgomery and Chase Burns. So
Mhm.
if you got one of those two guys, like I feel like you're set. He's big power bat, amazing defensively. He's going to be a top 15 overall pick in the draft. He's going to be insane.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I got a lot of flack for this when I said this in an A&M group chat. I don't think he pitches that much. I think he
Yeah, I
truly
agree. I don't think he does
focuses on
either.
playing right field. I think that's where he projects at the next level with a plus plus arm and a plus plus bat. But sliding over into center field, that was kind of the revolving door last year for Sosnego and really kind of the Achilles heel in SEC play. Jace Lavalette slides over from right into center field. And that was something that I was really honestly kind of worried about when I saw him at fall camp. I was like, hey, like, why is he in center field? Like, does A&M lack athleticism and he's forced to kind of be their first bat? But that really isn't the case. I think that the way that he's progressed and how he tracks fly balls, he's got a plus arm as well. So he looks to kind of make the jump, and he played center field for Team USA as well. So I'm excited to see kind of how he translates into center field. But again, 288 average, which doesn't really jump off the screen when you look at it, but you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt about how down he was in preseason and how much he truly kind of came on in SEC play. Obviously, he had
Yeah.
the big walk off against Mississippi State in the top. It wasn't a walk off. The go ahead home run in the top of the
Yeah.
ninth. That was kind of his signature moment. And again, he was kind of the catalyst in this lineup, which at times outside of Jack Moss was really, really inconsistent. So excited to see kind of as he makes this next step forward. Hit 21 home runs for the Aggies sliding into center field. I think it truly kind of gives the Aggies one of the best 1-2 punches in the outfield.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the bat progresses a lot this year, especially as another left-handed guy. You never know you never know how he's going to do, but like athletically in center field, as you said he looks like a lot better in center field, so that's a good plus. But yeah, it's just again progressing another young guy in the lineup. So
And then moving over to left field, this kind of is the only one that feels like it's a little bit more open, just because the other two guys are first rounders going in really, really high. I
mhm.
think Hayden Schott won the job for him. Graduate transfer coming over from Columbia, 2022 first team All Ivy, 2023 second team All Ivy, just because I think the guy in front of him had a little bit better of a season. But, this wasn't because Hayden Schott took a step back. But, there are a few names here that Aggie fans have kind of come to recognize that are at least putting themselves into the conversation. Travis Chestnut had a really, really good fall. Tab Tracy, I think, is another kind of athletic guy that I don't think he gets a lot of playing time, but he could kind of slide in as a late inning guy. Camden Sorrell, I think, is another very guy to kind of watch here as well. But again, Hayden Schott, lefty righty guy. I think he's kind of the one that's going to be the opening day starter in left. And if he hits like he hit in the Ivies, I don't see the other guys kind of getting a lot of playing time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if he hits, I think he'll stick. But then again, if he doesn't, I could see just a revolving door in left field, and they kind of just ride whoever's hot going into SEC play.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing is they're going to ride the hot hand. I mean, Sloss has made it very evident that he doesn't care about
The
age
name,
or
yeah.
anything like that. He's going to go with who he thinks gives them the best chance to win. Um, Before we transition into pitching, which is kind of the big question mark for Texas A&M, where do you kind of rank this Aggie lineup in terms of others in the SEC? I think that they are one of the more talented lineups in the SEC.
Yeah, I agree. They have the potential to be one of the more talented lineups. Ranking wise, I don't. I feel like I would have to see him play before I can actually give him an actual ranking.
Where
Because
would
there's
you rank
again
them in the other Big 12 teams that we've done? Or not
Big
the other
12
the other
teams.
Texas teams we've done.
Oh, the other Texas teams. They're probably. Um, I'd put them second behind UT maybe.
UT. Okay, I was
Maybe.
gonna put them
Yeah.
second behind TCU, but
Oh yeah,
I
yeah. I
think
forgot. Okay, yeah, yeah,
so. You think they're third?
yeah. I think they're third. I think they're third.
Third? Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's a hot take there. I'm here for it though. I kind of like it. I'll be honest with you. I think that especially what we've seen with from A&M in the past about not getting over that hump. I
Yeah.
I could almost agree with that. But we'll go ahead and transition into the kind of biggest question mark for Texas A&M, the pitching staff. Chris Cortez obviously has, you know, radar gun stuff up to 99 when I saw him at the fall. Didn't walk a single person. Worked a lot of 3-2 counts in the fall. But again, the fact that I'm even mentioning that he didn't walk a lot of people should tell you everything that you
Yeah.
need to know about Chris Cortez. I mean, we've known the velocity has been there. It's the command that's really kind of let him
Yeah.
down. He was the first guy to pitch in fall camp, so I think he's going to kind of be the Friday night guy
Yeah.
until he's not. And
Yeah.
you're going to know very, very quickly with Chris Cortez if he's not. That's the one thing that I'm kind of interested to see how he plays this
Yeah. Just
kind of
keep the
plays this
walks down.
staff because he's got a lot of guys that just kind of go together. Tanner Jones is another name to watch out for. Justin Lampkin is another one. Troy Lansing, who was the Saturday guy for him last year, who really struggled with the walks where he'd be pitching fine for 3 innings and
Yeah.
then blink and he's walked 6 guys. I think he's going to be in the mix a lot too as well. And then Ryan Prager coming off that injury. I think he's the other one that you kind of have to circle as well. But again,
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot to like about the A&M staff, and it really does kind of feel like you're throwing at stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah. I
I mean,
agree.
every single one of them has something that they don't do very good, and
Yeah.
most of it is walks, which I know just drives Sloss crazy.
Yeah. Walks are not the ideal thing in baseball. That's for sure.
Moving on to the bullpen, Evan Aschenbach expects to kind of be in the same role that he was last year. They get him back as the blend transfer. It's almost kind of crazy to see that he was the first guy out and how many innings he ate up because this is the one thing that got me about Sloss is he had said that he had talked about putting Aschenbach on the cut line in fall camp, and
Really.
yeah, and then them kind of being like, well, you always need a lefty that comes in and throws strikes. And sure enough, that's what A&M needed last year was a lefty to
Yep.
come in and pound the zone, and he really kind of came into his own. Shane Zadejo is another name to kind of really watch here. He started a ton of games as a freshman for him and then came out of the bullpen. Brad Rudis, too, as well. He started a ton of games, or came out of the bullpen in a ton of games, but we really didn't see him a lot down the stretch. So
Yeah.
interesting to kind of track how they use Brad Rudis again. Then a few other names. Zane Badmev is another
What
name
a
that we
name.
kind of project to be in here. Eldridge Armstrong is a transfer coming in. I think he's kind of another eat 'em up kind of inning guy. And then Isaac Morton, Caden Wilson, and Brett Analock. So, I mean, there's a lot to like about this Aggie bullpen. I mean, they have the depth that they didn't have last year. I know that
Yeah.
they kind of struggled at times where it almost kind of they went down to the bench and they're like, you go in.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be how the story of this Aggie team is how this bullpen kind of comes in.
Yeah. I think you said it perfectly with the starting pitching. Like pitching wise, it looks like it's a lot of just throw stuff at the wall and kind of see what sticks and what doesn't, and then just ride that into SEC play.
Yeah, they are going to have to figure out a lot before
Yeah.
SEC play. And
Yeah.
luckily, I think that they have a little bit of flexibility to do it as we kind of transition into the schedule. They open up with a very, very underrated McNeese team. McNeese was
Hmm.
a perennial power in the Southland Conference. I think that they didn't make the tournament last year, but I think they're picked to win it in a few of the polls. So McNeese is kind of a tough team to watch out for. They're kind of a pitching first kind of team. So it's going to be a very good test for the Aggie batters. UIW, who again was another team that was kind of in the mix as well. That's
Hmm.
their midweek. Wagner is coming down from up north. I think that one's kind of a tune 'em up game.
Yeah.
Lamar, who beat them in a midweek last year. And the big one is the Globe Life Series where they play Arizona State and USC, two
Yeah.
teams that are looking to kind of take big steps forward. So we're not going to learn a lot about this Aggie team and really until that Globe Life
No.
at the third week. But again, they play USC and Arizona State twice, and then they roll into that Texas midweek. So I mean that's going to be a very, very test your pitching staff kind of game. And then they open up SEC play with
Yeah.
Florida, who they beat last year, kind of was their best win. Honestly, it's the series that got them in the tournament. not going to
Yeah.
sugarcoat it. They were ended up being a national host that went very very deep. I think that A&M, that's the only reason that A&M really was in the tournament was that Florida series. So Florida is going to be looking for revenge there. But it's a very very exciting SEC slate as they draw Vanderbilt out of the East, Georgia out of the East. Obviously, that series with LSU is going to be big, and they closed with Arkansas. There's a lot of places for the wheels could come off here at Aggieland too. Just the
Yeah,
way that
I
the
agree. I
schedule's
could.
set up. I mean, it's just a gauntlet, 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 which is what we see in the SEC a ton. It's and again they have that Arkansas one at the end, which again I don't think is a team that you ever really want to count on
No.
getting wins against, as they always seem to kind of heat it up right there at the end of that time. So I think that's gonna be a tough one to kind of go through. It is at Blue Belt Park, who A&M does have a little bit of good history with, but it's an exciting slate. It's a slate that is capable of being an RP, giving you enough RPI to host. So excited to kind of see how this Aggie team translates into it.
Yeah, I agree. I could. The thing is, I could definitely, depending on how their pre-SEC schedule goes, I could definitely see them going into Gainesville and just getting absolutely just donkey slapped on. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
I could see that too. They're a very very talented team too as well.
Yeah,
But again, crazier things have happened with Schlossnagle
that's true.
teams. I mean, they always kind of seem to be in the mix. Even when they lose by 1 or 2 runs. Aside from Bama, who had just got caught cheating, I think that they usually tend to be in a lot of the games. But
Yeah.
before we go, Jackson, what's kind of the ceiling? What's kind of the floor? And then what's your expectation for this Aggies team?
Ceiling, I definitely say they could definitely make a regional, assuming everything. But that's assuming everything has to everything has to go right for them, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
they make a
There's a lot of
regional.
yeah, I think they make a regional. There's a lot of question marks because just again, I think everything has to go right for them. The floor, I think they're competitive in SEC play, but I don't know if they're dominant in SEC play. I'd say.
Yeah, I would say honestly, I think the ceiling of this team is a return trip to Omaha. They have one of the deepest lineups. If the pitching clicks even just a little bit more than it did last year, I think that
Yeah.
they could kind of make a big switch. Honestly, I think their lineup masks a lot of these pitching woes that they have. So even if the pitching kind of gets them into a lot of trouble, I think that they'll still be a regional team. But it's weird. I feel a lot better about the pitching this year than we did last year. And last year they ended up being in the finals of a regional and in
Yeah.
it. So it's a weird dynamic with Aggie baseball because it always seems that when they're supposed to be talented, they're not very good, and then when you kind of doubt them, they get good. So
Yeah,
I
exactly. When
don't
you
know what
count
to
them
think
out,
of
they're
this
always
Aggie.
in it. That's what it's just
They're always in
crazy.
it. Yeah, that's the.
Yeah.
It's always competitive. They always lose in stupid ways too. So they're always a fun watch.
Yep. I agree.
Well, Jackson, I think that's all we have time for. Thanks for tuning in. CBC Texas, this was our last kind of preview show. So the next one that we're going to be doing is we're going to be unveiling our rankings. So we're going to do a ranking show. We've already ranked kind of the 4 big ones, but we'll go in behind and rank, the TSUs, the Lamars, those kind of levels. So be on the lookout for that. That'll be next Thursday, same time. Monty and I on the ACC stuff, we're doing, I believe it's Wake Forest and NC State on Wednesday,
There we go.
and then the weekend rotation we're going to have on Saturdays as well. But Jackson, we're one step closer to opening day.
I know, dude. Happy February.
Happy February. Well, thanks again, Jackson. I'll see you next week.
All right. Later, man.